Welcome to United Shades of Gray, Conversations of Race in America on WSGW. Now, here is your host, Kareem Bowen.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of United Shades of Gray, Conversations of Race in America. I am in the studio today, and if you're watching via social media, you see these two distinguished gentlemen with me here today. One is my producer, John B., in the place to be. What's good, John?
Hello, hello.
The other guy, who is somewhere between Christmas and Midland, is our guy, Mark Bassett. Mark, what's good?
Hey now.
Hey, now, Mark, we got to get an update real quick. Everyone who's ever watched the show or listened to the show, they know about your fascination with all things Christmas. You are fresh off a Christmas aglow, if I'm correct. Was this in South Carolina?
No, it was in Norfolk, Virginia.
I knew it was on the eastern side of the state.
Tidewater region.
And so give us an update on this Christmas aglow. It was funny because I got a text from Mark saying there are no black people here this year. There was one black couple that I saw, and then I think later on you saw that same couple again. Mark, am I correct?
That's correct. It's an elderly couple, older than me, so probably in their 70s. And the wife she displayed in the museum last year. And again, the museum is kind of a ballroom, and probably 25 different people will come in and put up a display of a part of their collection. And she actually did two displays. She had a history on glitter for Christmas, which was pretty interesting, actually. And then she had a really unique and really good display. And all it was Christmas photos, family Christmas photos of black families in cool old frames, old black and white photos with Santas, with families, opening presents. And I didn't read all of the details. I'm not a big reader. I don't know if it was just of her family or her and her husband's families, or it was just families in general, pictures she's found. But it was really pretty interesting, actually.
So Mark, Christmas, Santas, things of that nature. I got to ask the question. Was the Santa black in the pictures?
Some were, some were not.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yep.
Because I grew up in a place in town.
Well, I would think in like a major city where they've got black neighborhoods back in the day.
Yeah.
That they would have had a black Santa Claus, I would have thought. Yeah.
But Mark, I grew up here in the great Midwest, right here in Saginaw, and I never had a black Santa except when I would go to what used to be, I guess it still exists, the Fashion Square Mall, and that was the only time I ever saw a white Santa. In our home, said it was black. I told you about how Grandma would paint Santa black on the pictures and the artwork. When he showed up under the tree or for Christmas, whenever we did those things, we always had a black Santa. My grandmother used to say, ain't no white Santa ever bought you nothing for Christmas.
I actually have two black Santas. I have two black Santas. Obviously, the one your mother gave me. And then I found a smaller one, maybe, 4 inches tall, that I actually brought kind of as an homage to you and Mother Walker to the display, and I put it amongst my advertisement.
Mark,
so I displayed this year. I had a pretty large display.
I appreciate, Mark.
I had a pretty large display, really, of advertising.
I think you got a little bit of a lag, Mark, but I tell you, I appreciate us being keeping you culturally aware as you do your Christmas decorating and keeping Black Santas alive across the region. I appreciate it. You're probably the only one in the great city of Midland who may be pushing a Black Santa other than some of those friends of mine who are out there in the Midland area. But listen, I wanna continue. We're in the process. This weekend is happening, is a thing. Mark, let's talk about what this weekend is. We're putting together some things. I won't be able to be there Saturday, but we're moving forward. Let's talk about what's happening.
Well, Jonathan and I are meeting at the parking lot of the radio station 8 a.m. Saturday morning. We're going to drive down to Somerset, and we're going to get him a great suit and all the accessories he needs for his wedding. He already has a tie and a shirt, it sounds like. So it's really, I think, about the suit. Maybe we should get a pocket square too, Jonathan. I think you need a pocket square.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Shoes and a belt, probably.
Definitely a pocket square. Wow. So this
Maybe
is,
some socks too. Maybe a cool pair of socks too.
I'm down for the black preacher socks we gonna put on Jonathan. So when he gets down and kneels, if he has to kneel, are you kneeling during the wedding? Because they're like, so when he kneels, they can show off the socks and how coordinated, because you got to coordinate everything together. So I'm extremely excited about that. But we have, and last week before we get to what I want to talk about today, because there's a lot of stuff that's happening right now in the world around us. But before we did, we were talking about Cyrus Mackey Carmack. The young man, the 14-year African-American kid. And I told you guys we're going to go back because, Jonathan, you mentioned that he had pulled out a gun on the Asian man store owner's son. And so I went back and I was looking at those details. I'm like, how did I miss this? I don't know how I missed that. But you are correct. But it got me to thinking about something else, Jonathan, because I'll tell you what used to drive me crazy. When I would hear these stories of, this person being shot at a gas station, this person being shot at a convenience store, was in these cities they would have stand your ground laws. Like in South Carolina actually has one, and I think that this is where this took place. Florida has one. Texas, I think, has one. Does Michigan have one? I don't think Michigan is a stand your ground.
They're a little bit more nuanced with
how it operates.
With how it operates, but no, I don't think Michigan does.
Yeah, I don't think they do either. But when I saw this, I was like, this is interesting. I went back. I went down the whole rabbit hole. Right, I watched the videos of the kid going through, and I believe he was looking at water, and he had picked up 4 waters and put them back, and I think the son thought that he had stolen these waters, so he leaves the store. And what I want to add to this inflect into this conversation is that this interaction between the Asian store owner and black people, I'll say, is one that is talked about over and over and over again. It has also made its way into pop culture and into movies and things of that nature. Are you guys aware of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's very common to see that interaction in movies. So it's a very, very common scene.
You too, Jonathan, right?
Yeah, I've seen it.
Okay, so my favorite movie, when I think about this, the one that comes to mind most often is Menace to Society with Omar Epps, and I thought it was a great movie. Jada Pinkett, Omar Epps. I can't think of the other guy who played Old Dog, but it was and I love him. But anyways, very similar in terms of how it happens. They went into the store. There was some interaction between the Asian owner and the black student, and it ended up in a murder. It was crazy, but that was the premise of the story. But anyways, I was looking at this and I thought about that when I went back and looked at everything, and I still have a problem with this. He's a 14-year-old kid, even still. But my issue was because I know that South Carolina is a stand your ground law, and I would imagine that some of that, him being 14 and not old enough to have a firearm, would also play a part in how that would work. But I wanted to inflect the thought of, does your life being in fear, does your life being in jeopardy, does that play a factor in the pieces of this particular case? I'm curious as your thoughts.
It should. Legally speaking, though, in the commission of a crime, you do not have the right to self-defense. He was too young to carry the gun. That's a crime. Legally speaking, morally speaking, I'm like, yeah, he has the right to stand his ground. He's being chased by 2 people, one of whom is definitely armed. But legally speaking, no. You're in the commission of a crime. Generally, you lose your right to self-defense in that way.
Okay, and I think that's an interesting question, and I assume that would be the thought.
And I don't think they should have chased him either.
Well,
but that's where it came down to.
That's the piece.
Yeah.
At what point does a store owner have the right to protect his store? I mean, and to find out that there were no goods stolen. I do think it's problematic, but it is symptomatic of how the interaction, and that's why I asked you guys if you were aware of that. It is systematic or symptomatic of that issue, that tension between in many major cities between Asian store owners and black individuals who patrons who participate or who patronize those stores. And so there is appeal going on because it's interesting to me. And I asked about the Stand Your Ground because I've seen this law be enacted so many times. I think that this is the first time that the person who pulled the trigger happened to be a 14-year-old black man versus.
Well, no, he didn't pull the trigger.
I mean, that was shot.
That was shot. Yeah.
Pulled the gun. The gun in that particular situation. So because he pulled the gun in something, if he were 21, he would have the ability to have the gun, but still the murder of a young man who was protecting himself because you don't have the right to put your hands on someone. So my question would be, does the violation of the committing of a crime initial, because that's what, and I think that this is the outrage. If you would have never chased him out of the store and put your hands on him, there would have never been an altercation for him to pull a gun. And I think that is where the grounds of the appeal are going to go. It's going to be interesting to see how that law is interpreted because we've seen it happen so many times. But I want to thank you for calling me out on that one, Jonathan, and making sure that we got back to that. I'm interested in seeing how this appeal goes through that particular situation. So I wanted to make sure that I did come back to it because I said that I would, and oftentimes we start talking about something else. But I do want to get into today's conversation, which is really about what's happening here. We have had conversations about ICE, and that's immigration and customs enforcement, ICE. And when we look at this, we've been talking about this, but we've been talking about ICE in border states. We've talked about ICE in New York City. We've talked about even ICE in Chicago. Now it has come closer to home, and I don't know why I thought it wouldn't. But now we've heard conversations about ICE coming in and our county sheriffs and different saying, listen, we're not participating in that. But we've seen the panic that has taken place from those who are of Hispanic, Latino, Mexican descent, right? Well, this past week, we saw ICE in Saginaw Township. Are you guys surprised by, first of all, the presence in the manner that we saw ICE this past weekend?
I think it's important to point out in the manner that we saw.
Yeah.
The situation, it was a targeted thing. It wasn't just ICE roaming around like we see in
other cities.
Yeah. It was, we know this person is here. We know what they're doing. We know how they're involved, and it was a targeted enforcement action, I'll say.
Yeah.
In that manner, no, not at all surprised.
Okay. What about you, Mark?
No, I mean, I don't know this particular situation. I've been out of town for a couple of weeks. So, I think all along what I think most Americans believe is like, we do have border laws and we should enforce them. If there are dangerous, violent people in this country illegally, I should target those people and go after them. I don't know this particular case. And so if that was the case here, no, I'm not surprised at all to see it because they're going to, I would assume, try to track down those kind of people everywhere.
Okay, so
and that's not what happened.
You said that's not what happened.
It wasn't a violent criminal or anything.
But what was interesting, and this goes back to, it's interesting how some of these policies that exist really go to the core of people's belief about politics and their core beliefs about America. And who has the right to be in America, right? And so to me, it was interesting to see an issue of border control, or because ICE has the right not only on the borders, but also internally, right? So let's make sure that people understand that, because sometimes I think that we all think that they shouldn't go past the border. But they were first created, I think, back in 2003, right after 9/11, somewhere around there. 9/11 took place, and they were trying to find a way to protect U.S. soil and to tighten up the borders. And so I think it was about 2000, because 9/11 was in 2001.
Yep.
All right. So right around 2003, I think it was enacted. They were actually
the Department of Homeland Security
and
covered
customs,
a lot of things.
Yeah. So they had customs and immigration actually kind of merged together to create ICE. And I think the other thing that I think is interesting is, do you get the sense that many Americans are thinking like ICE is a new phenomenon, like President Trump brought ICE, and now he created this. He created Doge, and now he created ICE. Do you guys get a sense that that is the case?
I think a lot of people think that, and they're not entirely wrong.
Not me.
No.
Go ahead, Jonathan.
But I think that perception is out there because Trump bolstered their number in a big way and really gave them a lot more resources to pursue his agenda there.
What were you going to say, Mark?
Well, no, wait, I think most people are pretty much what Jonathan said. I think most people are aware that it existed. Clearly, Trump has added a tremendous number of agents and resources, and then they've taken a totally different tactic in terms of what their role is. And obviously, it's led to a lot of really bad situations.
Well, it's interesting. I knew that it existed. We didn't hear about it much because they were kind of this arm of customs and immigration that literally really around the border. And that's where they were operating. But I think what you said, Jonathan, is correct. He brought them forward and used them in a way. And I think that a part of using this particular agency, do you think a part of this was political stance? I'm going to use this because I'm going to push the border conversation.
It's their job.
Well, okay, I get that. But this particular, it is their job, but bolstering up, the term that you use, bolstering up the support and how we're going to use them. Do you think it was a part of the political climate or a part of the agenda to really, we're going to get rid of anybody who is not a documented American worker?
That was part of the promises that he made, was increased immigration enforcement, and that's that department's job.
And I'm going to tell you this, as a black man, and I say this for real, I have these conversations with other folks, and we've talked about it before on the show. In Chicago, there's a whole move of like, hey, we're not fighting ICE. Like, let ICE come and get all these undocumented workers and undocumented individuals who are in the community because they're taking away opportunities that black folks should have. Now, do I feel that way completely? Not exactly. I think that there is a sentiment that I have that I don't think that anyone from any country should be able to come in and have benefits that American citizens don't have. That's where I stand. However, I do think that there is a conversation about how we must treat individuals that are in our country, really no matter how they got into our country. But there is a certain level of treatment that I think is necessary. We treat prisoners of war with a particular kind of, with a certain kind of decorum, and I think that same level of decorum should go for anyone who comes into our country, even if they came in illegally after they're obtained. But I want to talk about, and that's why I asked you, Jonathan, had you been covering the news and what's been going on? I want to talk about the presence of, let's talk about the presence. We've seen, have you guys seen these workers that have been working on, I think they're bearing like lines for communication, some kind of communication line, fiber optics or something?
Could be.
Okay, Jonathan, let's be honest. When you saw them, because they were working in my front yard, when you saw them out doing work, did you think like, I wonder if they're documented or not?
No.
You didn't?
I didn't think about that.
When I saw them, my first thought was, ICE is going to be in town. I was like, because I went over, spoke with a number of them, they did not speak English. Thank God I do speak Spanish as a second language. I love Mexican culture, Latino culture, so that is something I've always invested in. But I did think of that. I thought, I wonder if these individuals are undocumented. And the reason I thought about it was because of all of the stories and things that have been going on. And I thought to myself, oh, wow, I don't know if these guys are undocumented or not, but if they are, this could be problematic. Mark, you're not from the area, but had you been in and seeing workers showing up in that capacity?
I think
again, I've been out of town a lot, not in the Midland area. I mean, but again, I've been in Southern California, I've been in South Florida. A lot of the workers are, doing what I'd call more menial labor, construction, service jobs are Hispanic, and a lot of them, my guess, or Latin American are not legal. I mean, you've heard stories of ICE showing up at farms and basically taking out the entire harvesting team. it's so yeah. There's a good chance there's a decent percentage of undocumented people working on sites like that.
And so that was I just kind of thought that, and
Well, and since Mark isn't totally up on the story, that's what happened here. They were working in some of this utility work, and they were on the job site. ICE rolled up, detained them, and took them away.
Well, so that's what I want to talk about. So I had been kind of like thinking in my head like these, and I'm sure other folks were thinking like when they're talking to workers, because I've seen other folks in the community like trying to have conversation. Oh, can you what are you doing, and not being able to effectively communicate that. And I saw just kind of the language barrier, and I thought to myself, there are going to be people out here who are going to say these guys are illegals. They are undocumented workers. And when I would talk to other people, and these are conversations in Black America. When I would talk to other folks in the community, or if we're having a conversation at a particular meeting, the conversation would come up. And I remember someone saying it's only a matter of time before someone sends ICE in to do a raid, not knowing whether these individuals are documented or undocumented.
That's not what happened.
Continue. No. And I'm going to get to that. And so that's what someone said. Not knowing whether they were documented or undocumented, because they do not speak the language, and they appear to be from the south of the border. And so it was an interesting perspective of me, and it's, like I said, conversations that have been happening in the village. So I want to talk about that a little bit more when we come back from this break. Stick, stay, don't go away. We'll be back with more United Shades of Gray.
You're listening to United Shades of Gray on WSGW.
This is Curry. We're back with more United Shades of Gray, conversations of race in America. Right before the break, I was kind of setting up this conversation about what has happened in Saginaw. Unless you were under a rock, or maybe you just have been out of town. I know that other folks have been all over the place. It is vacation season, so many people are missing this. But there were 9, I believe, individuals that were arrested while working on a work detail in the Saginaw Township area. I think it was like North Center and Greenside or Bowlingside or Green Bowling or Bowling Green is the area. And so I kind of know where that area is, but I've seen them all over neighborhoods, right? All the way down State Street, Davenport. We see a lot of work going on, and I've seen a lot of individuals who appear as though they are of Hispanic or Mexican descent. Now, we were talking, and you interjected, Jonathan. That is not what happened. Let's talk about what did happen.
So one of these people who was here doing this work got in, I believe it was a car accident in Zilwaukee Township with a sheriff's deputy. Maybe it was a police officer. Anyway, some local law enforcement. He got in a car accident with them. They filed the report. They found out that he was undocumented, didn't have any. Not that he didn't have any papers, but he was an undocumented worker here in the country. And protocol dictates that they contact immigration enforcement when that happens. They send it up the chain. Hey, we had this run-in. They didn't detain him. Local authorities didn't hold him in jail or anything like that, which is something that they've said they wouldn't do. And then as they were on a job site, federal immigration enforcement came, detained them, and took them away.
Now, people are going to ask the question, if you have him, why not keep him? I think that that's a legitimate question that many people are going to have. Why do you think that if they had this individual and they knew who this was, that they would not hold him? Because they said that they wouldn't. Why not hold them, understanding that this person has the potential to really be someone that ICE would be looking for?
Because he hadn't committed a crime. If he committed a crime that violated,
I thought there was an
law,
accident.
There was an accident, but that's not a detainable crime. Like if he had broken into someone's house, all right, we've got you on breaking and entering. We've got you on this. We've got you on this. Those are things that we as local law enforcement enforce. But he got in a car accident. I was involved with a car accident and I got a citation, I didn't get hauled away to jail.
But the reason you got the citation was because you had a driver's license and you had a way to hold you accountable for the accident.
Yeah.
So if there is an undocumented worker who exists, who gets into an accident, and he does not have the ability to prove that he has a license, and they find out that he's undocumented, I don't understand the reason we'd let them go, not having a way to hold them accountable if we know that they are not citizens.
Chances are, and I don't have any way to verify this is just speculation, he had an address that he could give them. I live here, I'm doing this. Maybe he posted bail on a driving without a license charge or something like that.
Maybe so.
Otherwise, that law still kind of applies. If I was driving without a license and I got put in jail and I posted bail, I'm out.
What do you say to the sentiment? And I put a call in to Mr. Gomez, who's head of the Latino. Go ahead.
I'd like to continue here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Though.
No, go ahead.
But a big reason that local law enforcement don't detain or serve immigration detainers, federal immigration detainers, not warrants,
Right.
but that's when the federal authorities say, hey, can you hold on to that person for us? A big reason they don't is because it has in the past been ruled unconstitutional, and many lawsuits have come up because of it. So local law enforcement are like, heck no, we're not touching that if it's not one of our laws. You're just asking us to. Now, if a warrant comes up, yes, we can detain you on, we can put you in the jail on that. But they won't do that for that reason.
Okay, so and I get all of that. I'm interested in getting your thoughts. I gave a call to, I think it's the Latino Advocacy Group. Mr. Gomez is in charge. We weren't able to connect right away, but we're going to set some time up to talk because I'm interested in knowing what is the thought. What was weird to me is this, that 9 individuals who had been working in our community could disappear like the rapture had came and left everyone else, and they were just raptured up somewhere. And I didn't hear any sense of outcry or rage or concern.
There were protests.
Well, I mean,
that
initially,
afternoon.
I hadn't heard anything.
Okay.
There wasn't like a major groundswell of a response. And it was kind of interesting. It was a little concerning but they say that, people who live in the township stay out of each other's business. But there was no real cry out or a response, even from the Latino community. The Latino, Hispanic, Latinx community, I didn't hear a response. And I'm just kind of like going, if 9 black people were working somewhere and disappeared, I know that we would be having like what happened where they go and there was no response. So that was the thing that concerned me. But in addition to that, there is a sentiment, and how true it is or not, we would never know. I just like to say when people do what they do, I take it for face value. It is what it is until I'm given some other nefarious reason as to what's going on. That a reason why they let that individual go was to have a way of understanding who else might be in the community. What do you think about that thought process?
No, because the decision to let him go was local law enforcement.
That's what I mean.
If immigration enforcement had them and let them go, yeah, I think you might be onto something there, Kareem. But it was local law enforcement. They didn't have anything that my understanding is they probably didn't have anything that they could hold him on in that way. So it's, okay, you're free to go. He might have had a court date pending for this fender bender or car accident, whatever happened. He might have had a court date pending, and it's like, we're gonna continue as though you were just any other person in the community, because that's our job, with the caveat we have to, per our policy, per our regulations, per law maybe, send a note, put up a flag.
So I'm not so altruistic in my thought process. I think that what I thought, and that's why I was very honest with what I thought when I saw these individuals coming in. And when I say these, I'm not being demeaning to them, but they were individuals that were obviously working on a project. They had been in the not necessarily they, but we had another group of individuals that were here earlier for a third-party vendor doing very much a similar. And I think that this one is,
stuff,
yeah. So I think that this was T-Mobile or someone that was doing this particular laying of the fiber optics or whatever. So when I saw him come up, I'm like, okay, you're tearing up the lawns again. Like, what's going on? And kind of had a short, brief conversation. But I thought to myself, like, this could really be a problem. I'm waiting for someone to call ICE on them. I literally said that. And the reason I said that is because I've seen these types of sentiment. I've heard the conversations that are taking place in the community around water coolers and things of that nature. I know there's a lot of people who I had at one point considered friends of mine who feel and have very strong feelings really about undocumented workers being in the country. And so I thought it was only a matter of time before we had seen something like this. Now, I did find out later, and he's been getting a lot of flack. Laws are laws. People got to abide by the law. And we anticipate that those who uphold the law abide by procedures of the law. So I can't really get mad at I think it was a township sheriff from Zilwaukee, or whatever his role is, for being upset. Or not being upset, but doing what he had to do because that's what the law dictates that he would do. If he did not and something were to happen, folks would be really outraged. My question is, how do we move forward with this and understanding that there are other potentials of other individuals? Where do we draw the line? There's people that are working. Who do we hold accountable? If he's undocumented, how did he get a job working on that site?
Couple things here.
Yeah.
One, I think that the employer absolutely needs to be held accountable for that and investigated for that.
Does that mean we get discounts on fiber optic services and they should give us all?
I would love to have fiber optic service.
Right.
But the other parts of that are, one, I don't think, like, look at all the hoops that had to be jumped through. Look at all the things that needed to happen for there to be immigration enforcement here in Saginaw Township. This random person had to crash into a police vehicle. That that officer then had to take the statement, do the investigation. They did. They put up their flag. They followed procedure. They didn't detain that person. I would guess that when they put up that flag, ICE probably said, "Can you hold on to them for me?" And they said no.
Because they've been looking for a way to get into the...
I would guess, just assume. That's speculation. And then ICE had to conduct its own investigation, find out where that group is working, and detain them. I am shocked that I haven't heard anything about any of those group being released as, oh, we got one we weren't supposed to.
Right.
I was very surprised that they got 9 people and not one of them was, oops, we made a mistake here. I was expecting that.
Well, not yet. Let's say
not yet.
Not yet
at this point. At least not that's come out. The other thing is, despite the amount of resources that have been given to ICE, I don't think they have those resources to be coming up here patrolling the streets like we see in some of the bigger cities. I don't think they have the resources to, if Grandma Fenstermacher calls, there's these people on my lawn and I think they're undocumented. They probably don't have a whole lot of reason to come and investigate that. But when a law enforcement agency says, hey, we had this run-in with an undocumented person, that's a little bit more credible and they'll go after that.
I think that perspective is very altruistic. I think
it's very realistic.
And I'm sure you do, based upon how
I know I have a long delay, but I agree with Jonathan here. I think you have limited, they've significantly increased the resources, but they're still limited for a huge country. And they're not going to send them to small towns in general unless they know there's a super high concentration of potentially illegal immigrants. They're just not.
And once again, I'm not surprised, Mark, by your feeling that you agree with that. And I think that being a minority in the city, I have a different perspective because I've experienced what should be the norm in a very different way. And many of the occurrences and the encounters that I've had before, people are like, "Oh no, that would never happen," and it happens. And so I'm not. I'm
not disagreeing.
No.
Let me be clear.
Yeah,
I am not a fan of how Trump is, basically with Motown. I'm just agreeing with Jonathan that I think it's unlikely for them to go into smaller towns unless they know there's a really high percentage chance that there's a high degree of illegal immigrants here, because you know, if you're somebody that has a certain number of resources, you don't want to just send them wherever. You want to send them where you know they have a better chance of success. I don't agree with almost anything they're doing, frankly.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. But I do believe that in many ways it feels as though when we were talking about ramping up, it feels as though they are being used as a personal. They've been given this, and it's almost like, I want you to go and turn over every nook and cranny to find these folks who are illegal. And I wish that we did that across the board, not just with brown folks. I wish we would do it across the board. I wish we would find people who are here, because I do know that our First Lady is here on special, on a visa. She had to get citizenship as well, but she was here for a period of time. I'm just saying. So let's do this. And I think that there is a targeted focus. And the problem that I was having, and this goes back to Chicago, is that when we start using those phenotypic things like what you look like, your skin color, and maybe even a language barrier. Somebody said to me, one of the kids asked me this, and this is funny. I was talking, teaching kids in this summer program just some Spanish language, and there were some people talking about this happening. This was shortly after this happened, and one of the kids said, "Well, Mr. Bowen, if you're speaking Spanish, are they going to arrest you too?" And it was like tongue in cheek. I laughed, but then I thought about it. Like, I mean, hey, if I'm walking around speaking Spanish, and would I be approached as that? I mean, there's a possibility, right? Because now we can use how a person speaks and what they look like to be typically. Now, I would have documentation to prove, so that would, end that conversation. But as a kid, and this is the reason I said that, was because as a kid, now this was a black kid that asked me that question. What about the brown kids who are asking that question? And I have two individuals whose Spanish is their initial language, English is their second language. How do we deal with these conversations of how we share this information with our kids, so that kids are not afraid, who are legally in this country?
Accurately, for one, I think, caveat to what you said there, that thing about using appearance and speaking Spanish as a criteria for investigating somebody is to a very small area around LA.
But
legally,
but it's anywhere in the country that's able to be done, because it has now become a practice that they said that they could do. There was a change in law to say that they can use this. This was one of the conversations we've had on the show. So if we can use race, ethnicity, and language, then even though I can prove it, how does that stop me from being like I'm in South Africa during apartheid, when I had to have a code or a pass to say that I could be here because I look differently? You could tell that I was of an ethnicity different than those who were, the Dutch Afrikaans.
How do we keep track of citizens in the U.S.? We have ID. We have things like that. Even if you got detained, it would come up, oh, this is someone, even if you didn't have your license on you, and you couldn't remember your social security, whatever, nothing on the side of the road, you are provable. We know that you're a citizen of the United States, right? That is true.
Eventually, after days, potentially weeks.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying, Mark. So in New York,
there are many cases, Jonathan, where these people have been detained that no one knows where they are. Nobody, for days and longer.
And I'm just using these examples. There was
start arresting a nun on the way to church. I mean, it's sorry. I know I have a delay, but again, when you arrest a nun on the way to church on a Sunday morning, what are we doing?
And so that's kind of what I'm saying. We had stop and frisk before, which was another target approach based upon the skin color of an individual. How are we? And I understand. I'm all for border security. I am all for making America safer. I'm all for ICE doing their job. But at what point does that interfere with the peaceful enjoyment of being an American citizen? If you rent an apartment and people take away your ability to peacefully enjoy your experience in that apartment, that is a crime. Like, at what point is Is it okay for me to be delayed? Is it okay for me to be sidetracked from my peaceful enjoyance of my citizenship as an American? And because I might have a particular color skin or because I may speak a different language, I've got to prove who I am when other people don't have that same responsibility to have to prove that they're an American citizen. And so that is the concern or the thing that is problematic for me, because just as those individuals, hey, we pull these 9, as you said, I thought 9 was a large number. These 9 are here and we haven't heard anything. So at this point we would, okay, well, job well done. You did your job. But what about those other 9 who have families who are here that are concerned that they're going to be harassed and detained? And as you said, Mark, get back if, when, wherever they deported someone who was supposed to be here because they had the right to be here. And I don't know if that person ever come back. Why should a group of people who are in this country as American citizens be subjected to those types of situations? I wouldn't want that to happen to someone. If a man was a bit effeminate and he was walking down the street, we're going to arrest him because, now it's illegal. Like, I don't think that those things are fair. And I think that if we are, as you said, if there's a crime that's being broke, then let's handle that in a proper manner. But to be able to go that far, and it is just a question or a thought about how does the rest of society continue and how are kids impacted by those things. And I'm going to allow you to speak if you have any thought about where I'm going or what I'm saying with that.
Like, I understand what you're saying, and I think it's a good point. At what point does the law enforcement interfering with me being a citizen and living my life, at what point does that become a problem? And there are grounds for lawsuits against federal agencies like that have won. I can't point to any specifically with immigration enforcement, but there are so many instances where someone gets wrongfully detained and there's a lawsuit and they come out with some recompense for it, and it's a check on the law, it's a check on the government, the authority from the governed. And I think that's a beautiful system. But as far as, I think a lot of that is fear-mongering. I think a lot of it is, we've got men in masks walking down the street checking papers. We don't.
But Jonathan, I understand that, but do you see the other side of that fear? They're arresting brown folks on the side of the road who are working,
who are here illegally.
I mean, but what if one of these guys comes back illegal? As legal, do you see the problem?
I have a problem with it, yeah.
Okay, so that's what I'm saying, and those cases exist. So that fear is real. I saw Cinco de Mayo 2 years ago, and it was like a tenth or fraction of the people that showed up because Hispanics and Mexicans were afraid. But go ahead, Jonathan. Mark, you got about 30 seconds to get something in.
No, I mean, I'm too broken up to really participate in this. So, in terms of the stream here. So.
All right, were you going to say something, Jonathan?
Go for it.
All right, so this is an interesting conversation. I am concerned that I don't see as much outrage as I thought that I would see if 9 folks just disappeared. I know that there are some things I'm waiting for the Hispanic Coalition to get involved. I would love to have them in here to hear what they're going to say. We're going to reach out to some of those individuals who stand up for the rights of those who are from the brown community. I want to thank you guys for continually tuning in. Stay tuned to what's going on, because what happens to one has the potential to happen to all. Stick, stay, don't go away. We'll see you next week. United Shades of Gray.